start now. So welcome to this session. We're delighted to have Dr. Jane Lynch from Cardiff Business School, a reader in procurement. I hope I got that right, Jane, and Jane will tell us a little bit more about herself. As you can see, I'm not Gillian Askew, I'm Jimmy Brannigan. I am a co-founder of Go for Growth. My background is around sustainability and social value. That's what I've always done my whole career, how to embed sustainability, social value into business practice, and how that feeds into procurement and winning business is obviously why I'm linked into Go for Growth. And I just want to provide a bit of context, really, is what Go for Growth is. It's only been going around 6 or 7 months now. And we're currently working with a number of NHS trusts in London. We're working across the northeast of England. We're working with the blue light commercial police forces, and the whole purpose of the program, and it's really clear, the whole purpose of the program is how do we help businesses win work from the public sector. That's what the core is, and as part of that learning, how do we help businesses win work from the public sector, our other role is to be a critical friend to our public sector partners to say, come on, you can make this easier, you can actually simplify this to help these businesses be successful. We're particularly interested in working with SMEs and BCSEs as well as larger businesses, but primarily smaller businesses, our focus. There is a platform that we developed called the Go for Growth Action Planning Tool, which in effect gives you a way to assess what sort of support you might need. All the support is free. All of our support is funded by the public sector to help you. And if you have a look at that action planning tool, it's a really good starting point to start to think about what support is available, because it's got all sorts of links and opportunities in there, but also how might I engage with the Go for Growth program so I can get what I need out of it. So I won't say any more about that. The link will be on the slides at the end in terms of that platform. So please get in touch with Go for Growth if that's of interest. So without further ado, I will hand over to Dr. Jane Lynch, who we're delighted, absolutely delighted to be here. She is really busy and is a real expert, so we are delighted. So I'll mute myself and hand over to Jane and let you take it away, Jane.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, Jimmy. And I'm delighted to be here today again. I presented back in June for this presentation, so delighted to be invited back again. And today we're going to be talking about partnerships, collaborations, and possibly forming a consortium or consortia of some kind. So we're going to be focusing on working with other businesses to secure opportunities when this might be an appropriate route to take. And I think coming out of the crisis period, although we still seem to be a long way from the end of it, if we ever do get there, but nevertheless, this is a really, really good opportunity for you to think about how you collaborate with other businesses to grow your business. So I think some of the key questions, first of all, to think about is, would you like to grow your business? Have you considered collaborating with other small business leaders, sector enterprises, and charities? Now, that might seem a bit of a strange question, and usually when I pose that at events, the immediate response is, I'm definitely not going to be collaborating with my competitor. I'll actually be surprised, because sometimes when we go through difficult periods like this can be a way of building some resilience into your own business operations. So don't dismiss it immediately. Have a little think about what I'm going to share this morning. Have you heard of a supplier consortium? So what we mean by a supplier consortium is more than one organisation coming together. In fact, some of the consortia that I work with now involve up to 7 organisations, and of organisations of different sizes. So it is possible. Would you like to improve your chances of securing higher value public contracts? One of the reasons a lot of the work that I do around procurement is supporting governments in helping them to achieve community benefits. And by that, it's reaching out to local businesses. And of course, the majority of our businesses in the UK are SMEs. So if we change the structure of procurement, that can sometimes make it more difficult for SMEs to compete, usually falling out because of the first hurdle, because of the turnover, the financial turnover. So one of the reasons to collaborate may simply be to improve your chances of securing these higher value public contracts. So if the answer to the yes, hopefully it is, then please stay online and we'll help to get you started with this one. So I think, first of all, let's think about some of the myths around collaboration and the use of terms. So these are some of the terms that you may see: amalgamation, aggregation, networks, clusters, partners, collaborators, consortium partners, cross-functional coordination, cooperation, to name but a few. I think what's key here is this willingness to work together. That's really important. So the cooperation one, I think, needs to stay. Sometimes when we talk about aggregation and amalgamation, we're really trying to pull organizations together to either create a power within the supply chain, or to create economies of scale. And unfortunately, what tends to happen there is that price becomes the overarching objective, is to reduce cost or to achieve products at a reduced cost. And so this kind of myth around that is one that we need to think about. What we need to think about differently today is that collaboration is an opportunity for you to add value. And if you collaborate with another organization to win a particular contract, the idea of working together is it goes beyond the contract. It's beyond the relationship, it's the value added. And that's why you would want to invest a lot of time in this kind of structure. So I think this particular, even though it's dated back to 2002, I think this particular definition, I think, stands today. It's cooperative into organizational relationship. So inter and intra quite often get misunderstood. Intra being within the organization, different departments collaborating within the organizations, but inter is one organization to another. So that is negotiated an ongoing communicative process, and that relies on neither market nor hierarchical mechanisms of control. And I think personally that's one of the very best definitions that's out there currently to explain why collaboration is important in today's society. So one of the key questions that you need to ask yourself: why collaborate? What other options are there to help me grow my business if I don't collaborate? So collaboration, some of the myths around it, that it's easygoing, it's that anybody can be collaborative. That isn't the case at all. Collaboration in our own private lives can be quite, is something that comes more naturally to us. And there's a lot of research that proves that. But actually, collaborating in business is a whole different ballgame. So it requires a lot of senior buy-in. It requires a lot of investment in time in the upfront stages. So it's important for you to really understand why you need to collaborate. What's in it for me? What am I going to get out of collaborating? And some of the reasons may be these other points here. So is joint working part of your strategy already? Because it might lead you to new supply networks, for example. It may lead you to new business opportunities. It may help you to fill a skill that you don't currently have. So, for example, it could help you with logistics, could help you with IT. So these are some of the common reasons why companies collaborate. So in terms of what your current mission is, what are my organization's goals, strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities to collaborate? I'll be referring back to that in a moment. How will a partnership help my business to grow? And I think that's a really, really important point. But even more important than that, is my organization ready to collaborate? Collaborate is a process of managing relationships. Okay, so collaborative working, see it as a process for managing relationships in a better way. But it requires a certain set of behaviors. So the cultural side of things is a really important factor to consider. So if you're not going to get that senior level buy-in, you're not going to be able to commit the time to make the collaboration work. And then in terms of structure, what kind of consortium should we set up? And there are lots of different options, a couple of which I'll go through. So some of the benefits of collaboration, these points here are taken really from my own research, working with small businesses who are interested in collaborating together, working together for future opportunities. And I would suggest that you kind of start these conversations at least 6 months in advance of a contract opportunity becoming available, because it takes time to form a relationship. It's not like when you're forming quality standards, it starts from day one of the business. Relationships take time, trust takes time to develop. So you need to start having these conversations early on. For contracts that become available towards the end of next year. And that is a really sensible approach to do it. If you try and rush it, it's unlikely to be successful in the longer term. So I strongly discourage that and encourage you to think of this very much as a long-term strategy. So these are some of the ideas. We know two heads are better than one. Being self-employed or having a smaller business can sometimes feel a bit of a lonely place, particularly during a pandemic and coming out of a pandemic period, about what can I do differently with my business so that I don't get affected so badly the next time? How can I build in that resilience? It's an opportunity for you to look outside of your business. I remember when we went through the financial crash in the third quarter of 2007, early 2008, and you'd see signs on businesses saying closed due to recession. It was closed due to cash flow problems. We didn't see the recession coming. Like COVID, we didn't see COVID coming, even though if we look back now, there were lots and lots of indicators that it was happening. We just didn't anticipate that it would affect us. So I think, you know, we can no longer be that complacent in our business, and we constantly now have to look outside of our business and be very aware of the macro environmental challenges that may potentially risk our business. So, you know, all of those things are really important factors. One of the greatest challenges is thinking about who might be the right partner. In the good old-fashioned days, I've attended many of them myself, and this probably would have been one of them, where we go to one of those breakfast briefing events where you try to munch on a bacon roll and talk about business all at the same time. But, you know, so something positive has come out of these Zoom sessions. They're a very good place to meet other businesses and find like-minded people. The reality, you come away with a handful of business cards. The reality is you're probably only ever going to work with one or two of those people. So think carefully about who you want to work with in the future, and importantly, what value they're going to bring to your business. The SWOT framework, I'm sure you're familiar with, and it's one of the most widely used but most widely misunderstood frameworks as well. It's very good for understanding collaboration, and it's a very good tool for using for starting off a collaborative partnership arrangement. So basically, you have to identify, first of all, as an individual organisation, what your strengths and weaknesses are. Your strengths become your opportunities, and your weaknesses, if not addressed, become your threats. So ideally, when you're looking at thinking about who might be your partner, you're looking at a complementary set of strengths. So if you want to try and exploit your strengths to become opportunities, you probably need to be looking to a partner who will help you to address some of those weaknesses. Otherwise, you're going to get into this aggregation and amalgamation situation, and it works quite well, but in the private sector, it can cause you problems later on, because if you're all collaborating with the same strengths, you could end up competing against each other rather than cooperating against each other. So I think do think very carefully about how you use a matrix like this to help you find the right partner. Happy to take any questions as we go through. So when we think about structuring the consortium, if we're thinking about working with more than one organisation to make us contract ready, to open up our opportunities and to help us grow our business, then I would suggest that you use this particular model. And this is called the lead body model. It's well known in industry, it's well known in public sector, and it's one which is recommended. The reason is that it gives a little bit of structure, but it also speaks the language of collaboration. In collaboration, people say where it goes wrong is that there's an imbalance of power, is that you've always got somebody who makes all the decisions and everybody else follows. With the lead body model, you will have a lead body organisation, and that may be the organisation that has the highest turnover. But actually, when it comes to decision making, you have a steering group. One member has one vote. So everybody is responsible equally for making decisions about what that consortium gets involved in and how it's run, how it's managed, how you meet the kind of communication strategy that you're going to have, is to really think about that. Any overhead costs. So for example, if you were looking to tender for public sector contracts, the public sector would be inviting consortia bids, but actually they would probably want to only liaise with one person, one organisation. And so that effectively would be the lead body. There would be an administrative overhead cost to that, of course, and that shouldn't necessarily be absorbed in an imbalanced way. The cost of that would be then spread and split between each of the consortium members. So you kind of get the feel of where we are. There's a lot of free information available on the Welsh Government website on joint bidding, and some tools that help you to better manage your consortium working. So I would encourage you to just type in joint bidding Wales into Google or whatever search engine that you use, and you'll come out with the guidance that's available. I would admit that it does need updating, but the general principles of effective consortium working are there, and they're easy for you to obtain. So I think this is really important, is that this relationship between the lead body organisation, they purely become the central point of contact, the main point of contact. But ultimately, for the rest of the decisions that happen across the consortium partners, however many, that needs to be shared and agreed equally. And that's a really important point to make. There's something called a hub and spoke model. You can use that, but really, you know, it's really more of a supply chain model where you've got some, I wouldn't suggest using that one. It's a little bit too informal. The SPV is a special purpose vehicle model, and I would only recommend this structure for collaborations which have been well established. It would take you, it's when the consortium becomes a legal entity in itself, so that each individual organisation can continue trading as their own organisation, and a percentage of the business is managed through the consortium. So the SPV vehicle is a very effective model to use, but again, it takes a lot longer to set up, so be very careful of that. I think important before you start off, do the sums. Think about, get yourself a spreadsheet together. Think about what the overhead costs might be to actually get this consortium up and running. Things like insurance, things like banking, things like the additional administrative resources that you might need. And all of that needs to be costed out and shared equally amongst all of the consortium partners to think about what the overhead cost. It's really important to do this at the outset because otherwise these are the difficult conversations that come up later on. I wouldn't for 1 second say that everybody needs to become accredited with an international standard to manage a collaborative relationship, but there's an awful lot of free help out there to help you. What I would suggest is if you are thinking about bidding for a contract as a consortium, is that you use a more formalized approach to structure your collaboration. And this will not only help you, but it'll also be more assuring for the client who is inviting your consortium bid. So using something like the international standard, which is based on 8 principles, as you can see in front of you, is a very good model. It's tried and tested, not only in Wales, the UK, but right across the world. It was the standard when it came into force was endorsed by 26 countries and is now being widely practiced in public sector, private sector and third sector. In fact, I applied it to a charity-based project where we had 3 charity organisations coming together to work collaboratively, and it was very successful. And it was the basis of that helped us to win multiple awards for that project. So basically what this does is it shows you a process for managing collaborative relationships. And I would suggest that you look at this one quite carefully. On the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see Institute for Collaborative Working. It's actually a hyperlink when you get the recording of this and you get a copy of the slides that you can go straight in or you can Google it yourself. There's a lot of free information in there. They have their own network of great events and they have a lot of free information available to help you get started. The reality is that when most organizations start to collaborate together, they start where it says working together. And then they think, well, we've got this project, let's get up and running. Who do we need around the table? Let's go, let's get started. And off they go. What they don't start to think about is why we need to collaborate, why collaborate is the right vehicle. They don't stop and think about what are the individual objectives of each organization in the collaboration. What are our values? What's our vision? Because if we don't start to think about that at the outset, it can come as a bit of a nasty shock later when you find that actually one of you is striving to reduce costs in your business, the other one is looking to add value and increase quality. Yeah. So little contradictions like that, if they're not understood at the outset and managed at the outset through conversation, then they can cause you much problems much later on. The other really big area, of course, is knowledge, what we need to know, data. We're all surrounded by big data. The reality is that we share data for data's sake, but we don't have time to analyze it. If in the consortium you decide that sharing data is going to be a core part of what you do, you need to think about how that's going to help and support the collaboration going forward. So don't be afraid to ask those important questions. And I would recommend starting by writing a list of the types of data that you'll need, and then think about and have a discussion about the willingness of other partners to share that information. So what's really important to you may be actually quite strategic and confidential for somebody else, and vice versa. So, you know, sometimes our perceptions can be a little bit misjudged when it comes to knowledge sharing. It's important to have this conversation because, of course, this becomes the IP of the consortium. And if we don't talk about that at the outset, when we come to the end of the project or the end of the contract, what happens to that information? Who owns it? Where does it go? How is it being shared? And obviously, we've got cybersecurity issues as well at the moment, if we might have incompatible platforms. So don't ever underestimate how important it is to have those uncomfortable conversations at the outset. But using a structured process like this makes it a lot less uncomfortable, because it's all part of a process for managing effective collaborative relationships. And then, of course, there's the assessment internally of each organisation about what your strengths and opportunities are, your weaknesses, etc., to help you to create that partnership working, effective partnership working. And then once you've got together, working together and creating the value, it doesn't stop there. You need to think about how you're going to communicate. So even when you set up your consortium and then you're fortunate enough to win your contract, the hard work doesn't stop there, but hopefully you've done a lot of the upfront difficult conversations. So the rest should be around building that value creation. What you need to think about is, when is the right time to meet? What's realistic? What's feasible? How many people? Understanding in the consortium this issue around dependency, that's an important point I'll pick up in a moment. So value creation and what we want to get out beyond the contract, our wish list, is really important. And that in turn helps us to stay together. And importantly, at the outset, you would also think about your exit strategy. And that comes directly out of your knowledge strategy and thinking about the types of knowledge, the IP that you're going to generate together and how you might use that. Once you've been through all of this discussion, you'll keep this, and this will become the agenda for every subsequent meeting. So it becomes very helpful in terms of helping you to manage that later on. So what do I think what makes the fundamentals of good collaboration? So number one, it has to be leadership. So you need collaboration champions in your organisation, or somebody that really understands the benefit of collaborative working. You need to understand why you want to collaborate. In other words, what's your value proposition around? What's the real benefit to your organisation of this collaborative effort that you're going to be putting in? Don't be put off by those early conversations, and bring them in as soon as possible, particularly now that we're working online, because, you know, receive an email and you can very easily misunderstand that email, or you send an email out and nobody replies. Silence can be a very dangerous thing in collaborative working, in that sometimes we misunderstand silence and think, oh, I must have said something wrong. But actually, no, it may be that they're thinking about something, or it may be just that they're busy. So within the consortium, any contract that's managed through the consortium relationship, it may be that for some businesses, this is worth 5% of their annual turnover, whereas for others, it might be worth 60% of their annual turnover. It's really important to understand that at the outset, because then you understand the level of importance that you're going to be placed in when it comes to very difficult and busy times. So I think this, you know, being honest, open, clear thing is a very important features of effective collaborative working. So it's about exhibiting the right behaviours from day one. To me, I see there's a triple win here. There's a win for you, there's a win for your collaborative partner. There's a win for the end user of your product as well. And if depends on where you are in the supply chain, if you're business to business, there is an end win, of course, a fourth win there, and that's for them as well. So, you know, there's lots of opportunities to be gained here. And as I said, it is a tried and tested model, which we know delivers great benefits. So I think in terms of leadership and collaboration, structured collaborative working is key to adapting and addressing increasingly complex challenges with collaborative working. And that's especially so as we come out of a pandemic. What we've seen is a lot of open innovation. We've seen a lot of businesses coming together, collaborating together, but largely it's done informally. That works for a certain amount of time, but eventually what happens is people inevitably will go off and focus on their own business. So if you don't have a structure in place, it can cause you a lot of problems later on. So the capability of the collaborative leadership is essential in the future. So in terms of your capabilities, it may be that if you're a very small business, it's you or nobody, because there isn't anybody else to send. But if that is the case, that the assumption that everybody's collaborative is a wrong assumption, because actually it may be that you need to develop your own negotiation skills, understand how to build trust and how to manage trust within the organization. Emotional intelligence, all of these things really, really important. How to manage change, how to lead change. So these are the type of people that you need managing the consortium. Sending the wrong person in, it can be detrimental to the future, not only of the collaboration, but also of the contract that you're trying to deliver on. Building trust is a crucial dimension. It takes time to build trust, but we know from our own experiences, it can take seconds to lose it as well. So really think carefully about and never underestimate the importance of trust. Develop the right competencies is key and will need to be continued as the situations change within the business working. Our ways of working are changing and will change. And that means that our behaviours are changing, and our need to communicate and engage with each other, we're having to think differently about how we do that. I mean, I spend every single day either on Teams or Zoom. I have my favourites for different types of projects, but it's being aware of those challenges that you face with online working and thinking about how you would be able, but what it does, of course, is it opens up opportunities for you to create a consortium with somebody who's not even in your locality. They might not even be in your country. So it does offer an awful lot of opportunity for you to be able to bring leadership through collaboration in a much stronger, more beneficial way, much more about long-term thinking. The advancement of technology continues to improve our collaborative working. I particularly like Teams, because if we use Microsoft Teams for some of our projects, we can not only meet like this through Zoom, the Zoom window, the video conferencing. If after the meeting we want to continue the conversation, we can use the chat function. And I find that really useful. We can also store all the documents for our project in the same place, and we can all access them. So think about the type of technology platform that you're going to use to help you manage that. Some people use Google Docs. I know that's quite effective as well. I would say when you're starting off, if forming a consortium is new to you, I would suggest that you start off with one of your partners as somebody that you're already familiar with. There's already a relationship there. And then perhaps introduce other new partners as you work through that, to share that collective experience rather than working in isolation. This has to be the way forward. Again, a lot more information. There was a report published at the start of the year called Thought Leadership Insights. It's actually a reporter interviewing leaders from a variety of different organisations on their thoughts on collaborative working and how it should and shouldn't be managed. And so, of course, with like anything, collaboration brings challenges as well. So collaboration, carries risk if it isn't managed well. So I think particularly thinking about your client whose contract it is that you're going to be fulfilling through consortium working, you need to assure them that your proposal is as seamless as one by a single organisation. So in a consortium, particularly if you're thinking of public sector work, then you need to be thinking as one business. And that's why using that lead body model will help you to be able to do that in a more effective way. Okay, so really important. If you use a loose informal structure for managing the consortium, I can guarantee that it will cause you problems later down. Collaboration takes time. So as I say, if you're thinking about contracts towards the end of the year, now is the time to start. Make sure that you take time. The biggest amount of time taken is finding the right partner organisations. So don't underestimate or just choose somebody for the sake of it. Spend a lot of time thinking about how you're going to work together and whether they're going to be the right one. In the automotive sector, traditionally, they would spend 6 years trying to find the right partner. So, never underestimate the time that it takes to get it right. And remember, because this is just a core part of each of your businesses and your individual business turnover. So very important to get it right, because of course it's your reputation at stake. And as I said, accept varying levels of dependence in collaborative working. So for some of the partners, and nothing wrong with that, is that it may only contribute to 5% of the overall turnover, whereas for other partners, it may be a much more considerable part of their business. So you need to manage that carefully, but it needs to be understood at the outset, and that's really important as well. Effective communication, I've mentioned as well, thinking about the time and frequency and how you meet. And thankfully, the Zooms and the Teams windows help us to do that. But nevertheless, there's definitely some downsides in that you don't get those informal discussions that happen over coffee in between the meeting time, etc. Okay, so finance, insurance and TUPE rules, again, take some advice from your support agency, which of course here would be Go for Growth. In Wales, we have Business Wales, we have Social Business Wales, Wales Co-op, who are able to support businesses to help them with this transformation. So FSB, Go for Growth, I would definitely recommend you going to them if this is the model that you're thinking of using for your business. One of the things you need to think about is what happens if you're halfway through the contract and one of the consortium members pulls out. This is less likely to happen if you take all of the steps that I've mentioned previously. So, for example, thinking about partner selection more carefully, thinking about potential for conflicting objectives in your organisation. And that happened to us in a project, is that when we actually sat down and worked through strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats with all of the partners, one of the partners said, well, actually, I don't think this is for me. And that's good, because it's better they did it then than doing it 18 months down the road. So really important to think about how you manage the setup of the collaborative working. And remember that this is about long-term thinking. So it's a long-term strategy. So I think there is a poll there, but I'm going to move on from that one here. And just really to sort of open up now, because I'm doing a slightly shorter session. I've got a very exciting day happening in Cardiff. I'm based in Cardiff University, and I can actually mention this before it's even publicised. But at 12 o'clock, we're going to, Cardiff University is signing a memorandum of understanding with CIPS, the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. And actually, I've just literally welcomed the CEO, Malcolm Harrison, into the business school and come to deliver this session to you today. So there's never a time to stand still in this life, is there? So I wanted to just kind of wrap up here and really open it out to you for any questions that you might have. So that I can help you and support you going forward before I leave at 1:45. But these are my contact details. You're very welcome to contact me at any time. lynchj2@cardiff.ac.uk, and I'm on LinkedIn, all the usual suspect places. Twitter at Dr. Jane L. Procure. I'm quite active on social media, and of course anybody in a university, we're very much in the public domain. You can easily find us. Just type Jane Lynch Cardiff, not Jane Lynch, otherwise you'll get the actress details that come up, which is quite humorous, really, as my students find it. I hope this information has been helpful to you. And I'm just going to open it out now to if anybody has any questions. Thank you, Jimmy.